The White House has vowed to provide Australia with a nuclear-powered submarine at the earliest possible date, is what the wording was. Australia, of course, will receive 8 nuclear-powered submarines under the AUKUS Pact. What do you think the urgency is all about?
Well, Chris, it's partly political, partly operational. The big political problem for the government is that there is an almost inevitable capability gap. We already have a capability gap. Our Collins-class submarines are way out of date already. We're about to put them in for their life of type extensions, which means one of the 6 will always be in service. And the initial timeline from the government was that we get our first nuclear sub in 2040. Now, no project of this scale has ever been delivered on time. So the Collins were simply going to be gone and no nuclear subs to replace them. That is still broadly the case. But so the White House has been told by the Morrison government this is their chief political problem with this program, and so the White House is responding. That's a good thing in as far as it goes. Second question is genuinely operational. They don't want this program to fall over, and it's in danger of just being cancelled by some subsequent Prime Minister until you get the first Australian-flagged nuclear boat, even if it's a second-hand Los Angeles-class American boat, with two-thirds of its crew being American, or a second-hand British Trafalgar boat with half its crew being British. Once there's a boat with an Australian flag on it, the program probably is unstoppable. But Chris, I've been a journalist, full-time professional journalist for 43 years, and in my entire professional lifetime, one Prime Minister has commissioned a sub which has come into existence. That's Bob Hawke. So there's a lot of reasons to be sceptical about this.
You're very right. History tells us the story. I love it. I wonder whether some of this move has to do with some speculation that China might move on Taiwan in the next 18 months.
Well, I think there is a real danger of China moving on Taiwan anytime in the next period, from tomorrow for the next 10 years probably. Now, it is an indictment of all Australian governments since John Howard that we have nothing to put into the mix. I mean, we do have our Collins-class submarines, and we've got a couple of air refuelers that might be of use, and a couple of our fast jets could operate from American bases. But we're the 13th richest country in the world, and we don't have a significant defence force.
No.
I mean, as I say, the last Prime Minister to commission a sub was Bob Hawke. The government is planning to spend $580 billion on defence this decade, and we're not going to get one vertical cell launch for missiles in the entire decade. Our new frigates don't come until the early 2030s. We're going to waste billions of dollars on tanks. We've never used a tank in a contested environment since Vietnam. We're spending $30 billion on armoured vehicles for the army, which have no relevance in the China scenario. So all Australian governments, including this one, stand condemned for not producing a significant, relevant defence capability. Now, I think Peter Dutton is the best defence minister we've had in a long time. I think he's aware of all this. It's very hard for a defence minister to change things. It's like turning the Titanic, where there's so much momentum and inertia in defence, and we've had such a succession of such mediocre defence ministers before Dutton, and psychologically we just always think the Americans are going to handle it for us. So I think if the balloon goes up on Taiwan, we'll commit our forces such as they are, but they are pathetic at the moment.
Yeah, very true. And then when you've got a debt of somewhere in the area of 1.2 trillion by 2024, where's the money to double the size of your military?
Well, that's right, Chris. So we've wasted several $1 billion on the French submarines. We've wasted billions of dollars on helicopter programs, which have rightly been scrapped. We're going to waste $30 billion on armour for vehicles which will never see combat. We're going to waste several $1 billion on tanks, and we won't buy a weapon that you can use in war. Even the Australian warfare destroyers have 38 missile vertical launch cells. The Arleigh Burke, the American ships, have about 98. The new Chinese frigates have over 100. So our military is designed essentially for diplomatic purposes, to appear in parades along with the Americans. It's not fine. It's not designed to do any harm to anyone. The only ships we're actually producing at the moment are the offshore patrol vessels. And unlike most nations, even unlike Indonesia, we're not putting any serious guns or missiles or air defence. They're quite big vessels, these ones. They could take all that. Instead, we just run this kind of bureaucratic defence department, and it thinks it's so clever because it inveigles the Americans to being more involved with us. Well, that's true. The Americans are the critical factor. But I tell you what, if the Americans ever lose interest in defending this country, we are in a lot of trouble.
Spot on.